Cindy Sibilski is facing a heartbreaking decision. After calling New York her home for 18 years, could it be finally time to leave? I've never felt so torn, she says. New York isn't just where I live, it's who I am. It's in my identity, my blood. Displaced from where my heart resides, who would I be? But is something that's doomed to fail worth fighting for? A live entertainment producer, Cindy has lost all the income that was contracted or planned for the rest of the year. When the crisis hit, she was in Tennessee producing Drumstruck, a musical theatre production that was booked for 6 weeks. It was cancelled on the first day. When my partner and I returned, New York had already been shuttered, she says. All Broadway theatres, bars, restaurants, schools and more were closed. With heavy luggage and heavier hearts, we opted to stay with his folks in New Jersey, where he maintains a studio, to write it out for a bit. That was March 16. We've been there since. Cindy paid April's rent, she says, with great caution and concern, pleading with my landlord for a reduction or a delay, since I'd lost not only my job and income, but my whole industry. The response? Everyone's struggling. Since the government's helping you out, we expect rent in full and on time. She points out that to date, she has received no government aid. Then my roommate announced she was leaving, says Cindy. I have less than a month to find someone else in this mess when I'm not even there, or I'll have to leave my home, leave New York City. Will I even be able to pay my share when the little I've tucked away dries up? Perhaps it's time to take a temporary leave of absence, she wonders. An unpaid sabbatical from the city that's helped me, hurt me, loved me, disappointed me, given much and taken equally from me my entire adulthood. The thought of not being in New York is soul-crushing to envision. But I am one of the lucky ones. I have options, and now is the time to be smart and adapt, not cling to a past that no longer exists in the present. My only comfort is that if I leave New York, it will still be there when I, not as a prodigal daughter, but one forced into exile, can return home where I belong. An urban exodus was already being predicted before the pandemic struck. Now, with working from home the norm, and the major reasons to live in the city all but gone, Broadway, brunch, bars, millennials are part of a massive demographic shift to more affordable second-tier parts of the country. And while Governor Cuomo has extended the eviction freeze through August 20, along with a ban on late fees, campaigners and many renters say it's just not enough. Our landlord says, pay what we can, says Peter Royston. But what does that mean? Once we go back to work, we aren't going to get paid double, and we'll likely have less hours, right? Eviction moratorium is a band-aid on a gaping economic wound, tweeted State Senator Michael Gianaris, whose Senate Bill S8125A proposes a suspension of rent and mortgage payments for 3 months for those whose livelihood has been affected by the pandemic. We need real relief for people fast, he says. He also stated the need to cancel rent for 90 days cannot be overstated. Over the past 10 days, I've heard countless stories of tenants in distress, and one basic fact remains: people cannot pay rent if they don't have a paycheck. But with our legislators out of session, that process has stalled, explains Marty Gould Cummings, the drag artist and activist who started HK Dems and who's now standing for City Council in 2021. We need to have the state legislative body get back to Albany to be able to do the work they need to do, Marty says. On top of putting through Senator Gianaris' bill to suspend or cancel rent, which I strongly support and believe in, we also need to freeze rent for up to 2 years at the end of the pandemic and not have rent increase. This is a process. It's going to take a long time. There are industries that aren't going to open for up to a year. We also need to prohibit the reporting of non-payment to credit agencies for missed rent and utility payments, says Marty. We need to provide tenancy options to extend leases set to expire. People are really suffering, so I hope that our legislative body is able to get back to work. People's lives are on the line. My landlord at my business says we want our tenants to stay in business, but not if we have to go out of business, says Laurie Kaplan, who owns Bratenders in the Film Centre building on 9th Avenue. As if any small business in New York City is the same financial boat as a top-tier real estate conglomerate owned by billionaires, she adds. Since my business depends on Broadway and brides, it's likely we will not survive, which means I can't afford to live in New York City anymore, make mortgage payments on my co-op, or its exorbitant maintenance fees. The co-op board, she says, is not forgiving payments at this time. Never have I expected to be impoverished and verging on homelessness and bankruptcy at this point in my life, she says, through no doing of my own. Henry Johnson can see things from both sides. A tenant in Hell's Kitchen, he's also a landlord of a property in New Paltz, with a tenant, he says, who is now just beginning to be problematic about paying rent. I'm a pop and pop business and cannot afford to not get the rent, he says. I'm a tenant in New York City. What happens to me if I don't pay the rent because my Airbnb business died? His dilemma. Should he stay in his beloved Hell's Kitchen or move back to New Paltz? And anyway, he says, what will my New York be like post-COVID-19? Regardless of the uncertainty, however, some residents are determined to stick it out. Uri and Katie Finzi have lived in Hell's Kitchen for 10 years and fell in love with the place after falling in love with each other in a room share on West 47th Street. And while their lease is up for renewal in the summer, they consider Hell's Kitchen their home. We're very patriotic when it comes to our neighbourhood, says Uri, who works for Amazon. We feel a certain responsibility for Hell's Kitchen. I feel it would be so hard for us to leave when it's kind of wounded. We've had a few friends that have left New York during the pandemic, agrees Katie, and they've all said that they've felt or fought the feeling that they're abandoning the city. We're obviously both very lucky to still have our jobs and to have financial means, says Uri, but with the exception of my home in Tel Aviv, I've never lived in a place as long as this. He witnessed the first Gulf War, when many people packed up and left Israel. And I remember our leaders calling them deserters, says Uri. As a kid, that always stuck to me. I think a mass exodus from Hell's Kitchen could put it in a certain danger. You need to defend your home. The groups Housing Justice for All and Right to Counsel NYC have created a toolkit encouraging neighbours to unite in non-payment of rent as an act of protest. And Yadira Jimenez says if it comes to it, she'll absolutely go on rent strike. I lost my job on March 16 due to COVID, she says. Thankfully, I'm okay with unemployment and I can still afford to pay my rent, but it's nice to be informed on my options if it does become a struggle. A resident of Silver Towers on West 42nd Street, she's lived there for 10 years and is part of the West Side Neighbourhood Alliance and is on the Tenant Association Leaders Committee. We can't be evicted if we do go on rent strike or if we can't pay, she says. And they can't charge us any late fees, so that puts me at ease because I was stressing. What if? But I do fear retaliation, she says. Although it's illegal, we all know it could happen. New York is the greatest city, said Marty Gold Cummings. It has been through so much over the years, and what's beautiful about this city is when push comes to shove, we band together and we work together to help one another. And I know that's going to happen with this. It's really scary and it's really hard right now, but we've just got to keep pushing through and looking out for one another and protecting one another and being there for our neighbours and our community. It's great that you can just click a button online and order stuff, but start using your local pet store to get your pet food. Help that business. Don't use Seamless or Grubhub when you're ordering out. Make sure that money's going directly to the restaurant and helping them. They say, I don't want to see a city that's boarded up storefronts, but if there's no rent relief package that helps these businesses, then that is going to happen. Stay loud, says Marty. Put pressure on your electeds. Put pressure on the governor. Working everyday people are the people who run this city. We need to put pressure on the governor to do the right thing.